let's go ahead and get started with minutes and financials. I know we're a little bit behind on minutes, but now we've got Sam stepping up to take notes from this meeting forward. Is that correct?
Rolling up my sleeves.
So if you, all right, perfect. Thank you so much, Sam, for taking this task on, and know that we have your back. So if you need anything, let us know. Even, you know, if you need us to slow down, repeat something, please interrupt.
Okay.
Financials, Sean.
Yeah, sorry. No changes from month to month. So we're still at the same amount in both accounts, 402 and 403.
All right, let's go jump in straight into the new policies, because I read through that and I think I have more questions that I don't know how to formulate after reading all of that. That I think if you just give us the brief explanation, it will be a lot easier for all of us.
Yeah, let me, sorry, I'm running on one monitor tonight. Apologies. So yeah, so basically, just to give you all kind of an update, right? We are, the emergency orders are ending June 30th. So essentially, as far as I know, going into July, we will be moving back to in-person meetings. And so this is a way to balance out some of the expectations of the policy around electronic meetings and what that means without having an executive order, which we would no longer be under, hence this new policy. And I sent out an email earlier today that kind of is the kind of like the bare bones kind of way of thinking about the proposal or the policy. So essentially what this would require is that we would have to, moving forward, if we adopt this policy starting next month, at least 50% of the board or commission would have to be present. So that would be 6 members. That does not include staff. So that's not including myself. Would have to be present. And then you can't participate in electronic meetings more than 2 consecutive times. Sorry, I gotta feed my dog. Apologies. Fanny's making her appearance.
So as an individual, as a single individual, you can't attend more than twice online. What do you say?
Yeah, 2 consecutive. So for example, let's say July and August, you're out of town for whatever, you're working remote in Michigan. You can go to those 2, and then you'd have to come back for September, and then you could do another 2 consecutive, right? So that's kind of what that is. Obviously, there's a couple exceptions: health, death, military service, emergencies to City Hall property, which have happened in the past. And then public participation. This is where it gets challenging and where we're trying to figure out the kind of future of this. Not every facility and not every boardroom in City Hall will be retrofitted. I think most are already to a certain degree, like council chambers is retrofitted. You also have the McCloskey conference room will be pretty much retrofitted, which is where we have these meetings. So I think moving forward, for those of you that are interested in on occasionally remoting in, this shouldn't be an issue, right? The room is pretty accessible for that. There's this electronic device called an owl. I don't know if you have seen these in some of your meetings, but it's kind of, it looks like the owl from that 80s movie. So like it picks up on sound, and it actually like turns the camera towards you. So that's a possibility for some remote meetings, for if there is a need for commissioners not to be there. But as a commission, I mean, how do you all feel about moving forward, going back to in-person as soon as July? Some people might not feel comfortable with that, but this is kind of just like a state mandate. And Nick, I see you've raised your hand. What's challenging for us is that we are a public board, right? So we have to do our due diligence. We're not a nonprofit that doesn't necessarily need to have public meetings. The other aspect that makes our stuff a little bit nuanced in certain capacities is when we're dealing with money. And that's a big oversight concern, and why the state wanted to make some kind of electronic policy happen is because of the oversight of dollars, hiring, negotiations, those kinds of things have to be done in a public context. And so there was concern that that would happen behind closed doors, frankly. So Nick, go for it.
So
One question.
I'm personally comfortable with being back in person, but the thing I wanted to clarify just in this policy is like the 50% of members must be physically present. Sometimes we don't have full membership, right? We're operating with a smaller group and we still have quorum. So is that 50% of the total commission or 50% of the people participating in the meeting?
That is a great question. I don't have an answer to that. I would assume that it would mean the commission or
Or partial commission that we have, because right now we're.
Yeah.
Right?
If we don't have anybody appointed, then the quorum numbers drop. If we have people appointed, then we have to hit quorum. Does that make sense? So I think that would determine. So the fact that we haven't replaced Essence, Essence, you're first up on my screen, Rachel and Quentin. We don't have. It's 50% of this whole as we have it.
Okay, so of this group, like there's what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us now.
But there's 10 of us.
Or 10. So right. So there's 10 of us. Basically, does that mean that we always need to have 5 people in person, regardless of whether we actually have 8 in a meeting like today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Do we have the right to ask if everybody's had their shots or not?
I think that violates HIPAA. But so the city policy at City Hall right now is still that if you are vaccinated, you are required to wear a mask. So like if we are having an in-person meeting, we would have to be wearing masks, and we are still encouraging physical distancing. So that's, yeah.
And they will give us a room big enough.
Yeah, you can do that at McCloskey, but some of the other rooms, you can't have 10 people 6 feet apart. Yeah, I'm comfortable with meetings. I'm happy to be one of the 5 that's there.
Yeah, like
I'll
be there.
Just maybe the question is anybody uncomfortable?
Yeah, I'm fine with the caveat that anyone who does not, hasn't been vaccinated for whatever reasons, is very masked up.
Okay. Does anybody feel uncomfortable going into City Hall at this point, starting in July? Okay, so we can, what we can do, Sean, is, prior to each meeting, I can double check who's going to be, or you can all let me know I'm going to be remote or I'm going to be in person ahead of time, so that we make sure that we're not wasting anybody's time, because if we show up City Hall and there's only 3 of us and we can't conduct the meeting, it's all for moot. So we will just take responsibility for those of us who say, I'll be at City Hall, to really come through, so that we make sure that we meet the quorum.
Valerie, you got a question?
Yes. No, I just want to say that I teach a class, and so when we were in person, I was always a little bit late, although we didn't meet a lot. So I will probably take advantage of doing that remotely, because then it gives me more time to transition, but I can also be present.
Yeah, so we would have to adopt that policy. So Valerie, just for your scheduling, it's totally fine to be late. We're happy with that. We understand transit. Like, this is basically, just so you all know, the state is trying to mandate certain expectations about, public policy and good due diligence within government work. And this past year, it was complicated getting into this. Apologies.
I think what I am unclear about at this point is whether it is mandatory, because I keep hearing Sean say adopt this policy. Is it mandatory that we do adopt it, or are we voting?
We have to adopt this electronic policy, yes, if we want to continue to be the art commission, yes. But I'm just trying to entertain concerns from the group because this is a state mandate that has been handed down to us that we have to resolve by June 30th, right? So what's complicated is it was complicated going into this. It's going to be complicated coming out, right? So I think this just adds another layer of nuance that we weren't prepared for. Like, for example, tracking who's been at certain meetings digitally and versus in person, right? So we will work with, the city will work with everybody on the commission to make sure that everybody's going through this process, right? City council is going through this. It's very kind of abrupt. And I think, we're still in a global pandemic, which has been hard for people to deal with. But when the state lifted the restrictions, this gave us the only option to move forward for electronic policies. And this is in line with what city council has brought forth to us. So part of the issue too is that, like I said, I think we'll just have to do more of a due diligence and communication going into the meetings, knowing who's going to be there, who isn't, and it might just be an additional track sheet that we have at the beginning of each meeting as a part of our minutes, some kind of tracking system like that, so that
I'm on it. Don't worry.
Okay. That way we're in proper public record process.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and create a tracking sheet for that. And Sam, I will tag you in it or give you full editing so that you can also use that for your minutes to know who's where. And that we can include that information in the minutes, in person, XYZ, online, these people. So it's a public record of who was where or how they joined the meeting. Sean, one question, what's the time frame of this new policy? Are we looking at 6 months, a year? Is it going to change in 3 months? Do we have any sense?
That is a good question. I really don't have an answer on that. I think it's, I can find out from our legal team. I might be able to get an answer tonight once we're kind of talking about this, about what's the timeline on the policy. But I assume that it's for at least the calendar or the remainder of the year, but I will double check.
Yeah, let's double check, because that would be my assumption as well, but I don't like to work on assumptions. Any other questions, comments, concerns about this policy? All right, Sam?
Oh, I was just, what did you mean by like the things have been retrofitted? Isn't it's like they have the owl, do all the buildings have, the rooms have the owl, or they have some sort of like TV system? Or did you mean like they have like physical screen, like plexiglass or something?
No, I think all the rooms have been physically set up to keep social distance or physical distancing systems, right? I think like you can actually fit 15 in McCloskey. That's the max at the current like 6 foot diameter. But McCloskey has the ability to remote in, and so does Kelly Conference Room, which is where we have our public art planning meetings. So people could, for those meetings, remote in. There's a camera mounted there. It's some of the other conference rooms that you all may have or may not have experienced in City Hall that are smaller, right? There's like one that's like a 6-person called Lemon conference room. And then, so it's just, those rooms haven't been retrofitted. And then council chambers is obviously retrofitted for a variety of public meetings and engagements. So does that answer your question, Sam?
Yep. Yeah. And it was the council chambers, McCloskey, and what was the other one?
Kelly,
that have for sure been retrofitted.
Yeah.
All right, I have one more question. Does this apply to committee meetings as well, or are those separate?
That is a good question. I will verify. I would assume that it would apply to committee meetings as well.
Again, I don't like to work with assumptions, so because there is no minimum quorum there, I just want to see what the options are.
Yeah, that one, it might be a financial question about whether finances are being decided or not. That might trigger it, but I'm shooting a text to our legal team real quick. He might be able to actually jump on too.
Sounds good. Anything else on this? All right, let's move
Well,
on to.
We'll circle back. I'll see if Larry can jump on, but we will need to vote on it at some point. But let me see if he can jump on and get our questions answered.
Okay, because I know that I have to sign it and Sam has to sign it, but I didn't realize there was an actual vote. So you'll let us know. All right, public art near West Side mural.
Yeah, so I can handle this, Nick. Just real quick, just so you all know, I just wanted to touch base that the hand department, housing and neighborhood development, did award a grant to the Near West Side. They have reached out to officially start the process of the mural program. So I just wanted to let you all know, just as a full committee, we'll be working with the Public Art Planning Committee, but give it an opportunity to, if there's other members who have not done a public art call, have not been involved, but want to be involved, that project will be getting underway. Their grant has to be completed by November. Obviously, we can work with the hand department if that's not going to be the case, but I think we can get something turned around pretty quickly for the Near West Side to work with them on that. But I just wanted to put that on everybody's radar for moving forward in the next kind of couple weeks to the next couple months. That's going to be one of our public art kind of open call processes, is working with the Near West Side neighborhood.
Any questions? All right, master plan, Nick.
Yeah, so Sean, Sam, and I had sort of a mini meeting last Friday to talk through. It's basically the main sections that we needed some feedback from Sean on in regards to some of the case studies that didn't involve full commission work. The public-private partnerships, collaborations with other city commissions and departments, things like that. So Sean has a clear view of the items that need his attention. I think the timing on this is good because he's working on some like a big retrospective memo, sort of evaluating, his time in the role. And so he's sort of digging into this history of projects anyway. So that's with Sean. A couple of sections that Sam worked on, he's working on trimming them down a bit. And then it is on me to take some of the other sort of edits that we discussed, merging a couple sections and then going through the entire document to give it a bit of a more consistent voice. Since we had multiple writers, we'll just sort of try to streamline some of the language and look for redundancies and things like that. Sean can maybe speak to what his capacity is for those sections, but what I would really like to have happen is we have our next committee meeting planned for Friday, July 2nd. And then I believe our next full commission meeting is the 14th, if I have that on the calendar correctly. And so by that July 2nd committee meeting, I would love to have all of the edits that I'm working on. Sean, if you're capable of getting that there, Sam, a little bit that you have, so that the committee can do sort of one final review. I would actually like to have that drafted people in advance of that meeting, so maybe I'll set the deadline now for, so looking at this, the Monday ahead of that. So Monday, June 28th, if we can, everyone who's working on edits, get that there by the 28th, so the committee can have a few days to review, discuss on Friday the 2nd, any notes that we take out of that meeting, I or whoever is working on it in any individual sections, but it's probably me, can do any final edits so that it can get to the commission, the full commission, a full week in advance of our July 14th meeting. That way people can do a reading of it, ideally give feedback via email in case there's any big trouble issues for folks, but so that we can hopefully come into that July 14th meeting and vote to pass it, or have final discussion. How does
I
that
like the
sound to everybody?
I like the schedule. I think that's a good idea. The one thing that I'm unclear on is if you need anything else from me at this point.
I don't
I
think
started on the toolkit, but which I don't think is finished, but I think I need others to look at it, and I don't know if that has happened yet or not.
Yeah, I think that here's my thought is that the toolkit, perhaps we link it as sort of a secondary document. I feel like that's something that we probably, it's a little bit more of like a living document that we add to.
I agree.
So I think that as far as what we vote on, and what gets like full commission review, that maybe doesn't have to be complete. I mean, if it is, that's great, but I don't think it's an essential part of the vote, as it's, again, something that will be added to and tweaked over time. It's not necessarily what we're memorializing. And so, I would say in the interim, Brian, if there's specific feedback you need from people, or questions that you're looking to answer, direct those to folks, and hopefully we can revisit in the next committee meeting as well. Does that sound fair?
That sounds fair. I'll reach out to you, Sean, at some point. That's all.
Cool. And then I guess any other thoughts or questions on the master plan, or does that timeline satisfy everyone? Okay, then, I guess before, like Sean can get into the repairs and some other stuff, but and he can probably pick up with other project updates, but I think the big thing is there's a revised plan for the 4th Street garage, that Sean, the initial, is it the north or south facing section is going to actually start installation in the next few weeks. And that will come in phases. It won't all be done all at once. So don't be alarmed if you see part of it up and the rest comes later. That just sort of has to do with the construction timeline for the whole garage and how cranes need to be positioned to actually install it and things like that. But it's starting soon.
Yeah, so we worked with the 4th Street folks. I mentioned this to Nick and Bryony that there was a little bit of some material issues that caused a little bit of a shrinkage in some aspects of the project, but it did not overall impact the project too severely, and it didn't violate any of their contract. So we were happy with the approach. So some of basically like a half a foot on each side of the bays was removed, which is at that scale, nobody's going to know the difference because it's been on people's computer screens and it's a digital render. That's because, as you all know, COVID costs and production costs have just skyrocketed and continue to do so. So we don't want to impact any individual artists for not being able to budget accordingly 6-8 months ago, knowing that numbers, prices have increased. That's not on them to be punished, but they have fast-tracked their production. And so, I will know more next week, but it's looking like the end of June, the southern facade will be up, which is really exciting. So we'll be able to see a certain aspect of that project. So we're really excited about that. So if you hear of anything that might, there's some fear at City Hall a little bit that people are going to think that that's the public art piece and that's it. So just rest assured that it's going to come in phases. It's not complete. The garage is not going to be complete till the end of August anyhow. So just want to be cautious on that side of things. Bryony?
Do you know how many phases we'll have? Because it's something that we can mention like clearer.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that from the fabricator about, I think what's probably going to happen is the southern facade will be done and then the rest of the project will coincide simultaneously. The north and the east elevations will happen at the same time. I think it's just with timing of there's a timing issue with an installation on the southern facade that doesn't allow the weight of the crane that they need to be used. So it's kind of this weird do-si-do with a major construction project like this, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. Hopefully it will get all resolved.
Okay.
Still waiting on an update on Switchyard. We should be moving forward on that, and when we can start to plan a dedication ceremony around that. And then Trades Garage is on track. Esteban has actually bumped up his timeline and I believe can complete the project in November, which is exciting, which is a month sooner than expected. The other kind of altering timeline is that Stefan Rice has gotten a residency at the International Sculpture Center in New York next year, early next year. So we will try to coordinate his dedication ceremony when he's here for that residency and try to tie that in. So I've been working with Ignition Arts on a new timeline and what that looks like. So they are moving into prototyping that project in the next couple weeks. So it's all happening, which is really exciting. 3 to 4 years worth of work. It's all kind of coming together. And then we've been taking care of some previous projects too. So if you live over by Washington or have been down Washington Street, it's been kind of a construction zone, but Emily Wilson's mural was vandalized last year. We've been able to order repairs on that. So she came out over last weekend and finished repairs on the waterway murals, which is like 7 bays that celebrate various water systems in Bloomington. We are working on, the People's Park negotiations are still going on, and currently looking into repairing the Joe LaMantia work. It's a gate that's at Bryan Park that has faded and it needs some repairs. So it's for the playground at Bryan Park. If you haven't been there, it's a kind of a beautiful, I think it's versions from Animal Island that are just basically smaller as a gate to the playground. Sam, you're probably familiar with it, just living over there. So we're gonna hopefully get some repairs on that. So those are kind of those updates.
Any questions regarding any of these projects? Do you know if Esteban has collected all of the artwork that he needs, all the submissions?
I believe so. He just hosted, I think, his last workshop with Purdue last weekend, and I believe he hit his numbers, but I will follow up and confirm and send an email out if that's not the case. And then I just want to be clear, Larry is on, and I want to be respectful of his time. So when we move on from public art, if we could go back to the electronic policy so that Larry can answer the questions, we can adopt the policy.
That's now, I think.
Well, just one question.
Any questions?
One quick question. What was the New York residency of Stefan Rice?
The International Sculpture Center, I believe, is where he has his residency in the early part of 2022.
All right, let's go back to the policy.
Hey, Larry.
Welcome, Larry.
Thank you.
This is the Bloomington Arts Commission. I tried to do my best job explaining the electronic policy and the talking points. There's a couple concerns about, just real quick. So how long is this policy going to be in place? Like, is this an indefinite policy essentially?
Yeah, it's indefinite. So the General Assembly adopted this as statute. So before COVID happened, only if you had an explicit language in your authorizing statute for each board and commission could you have telephonic or electronic meetings. And what the General Assembly did here was add a statute to apply it to all boards and commissions, so including the Arts Commission in this case, the caveat being that you have to adopt this policy. But there's no end to it unless the General Assembly modifies the statute in the future.
Okay, so overall, basically, this is the new way and until further notice, and we're good to go for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. What was the other question, Sean?
Yeah, Larry, so we have a couple subcommittees, usually anywhere from 3 to 5. And also, like, when we do public art reviews or grant reviews, does this electronic policy apply to that? Or is that like a separate thing that we would need to adopt the electronic policy for? Like, do those count against as being meeting versus in person versus online? Is there a fiduciary judgment that triggers that? Am I explaining myself well?
Yeah, no, I think so. So it does apply to subcommittees, but each subcommittee, as I understand the wording of the law, the way it's worded, each subcommittee would be its own universe of meetings. So while this policy adopted by the whole board would apply to all of your committees and all of your grant review committees, for instance, that 50% requirement where you could only attend up to 50% of the meetings electronically, that would be a separate set of 50% for the subcommittees as opposed to the whole. And please believe me that I did not write this statute. I promise you I didn't. I would absolutely not do this to human beings that I actually enjoy and like and appreciate their work. But the General Assembly, what can I tell you? So one of the things I suggested is that if you do have subcommittees like this, and even in your full committees, is maybe we'll create, even if it's a doodle poll, just so everybody can visualize how many meetings you've participated in electronically, which ones are free, which ones are not, to make those count requirements. As far as grant reviews, whether that fiduciary consideration is somehow an exception or it requires all full in-person participation, I don't believe so. I don't believe that this is going to fit within the adopting a budget portion of the statute. So I think you'll be fine to do a hybrid meeting approach for that. And certainly as we get closer to these, or if there's any specific questions, I'm happy to always like take a look and take a closer look and advise you on a case-by-case basis if we need to. But.
So I have a question. If say I'm attending online for the next meeting, and then the next subcommittee, I also do online, and then the next subcommittee, does that count my third one? I have to be in person, or does my count go across all meetings, or just main meetings and then committee meetings as separate?
Yeah, just main meetings and subcommittees is separate. Is how I understand this is the way this is written.
They each have their own count. Perfect. That makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. And let me be clear too, in terms of there's not a huge violation provision in this. Typically, for a violation of open doors, which is this fits within the open door law. The remedy for that is that maybe an official action has to be redone if something's not noticed or you fail to allow public participation or something like that. And by public participation, I actually just mean the public has to be able to simultaneously view it and be present. So typically you would just have to redo that. Here, it's not clear what the penalty would be here if someone loses track and attends 51% of meetings electronically, God forbid. We'll try our best to monitor that closely. We're going to follow the law to the best we can, but I also don't want you to be terrified of making a misstep. I think everybody understands, including the public access counselor, who's kind of our referee or our lifeguard in terms of the open door law, understands that this is going to be a new law that we're all trying to get the hang of and figure out. So there will be some grace there.
Perfect. I don't have any other questions. Does anybody have any other questions?
I think there was just one more, unless I missed this. So the 50% in person for a given meeting, does that 50%, is that 50% of the entire commission, or is it 50% of the people in attendance? I.e., say we have 10 commissioners, but 8 are present, we have quorum. Do we need 4 people in person, or do we need 5?
Yeah, I read it as the 50% of the entire commission, so 5. I could see a reading that goes the other way, but the way I read it is 50% of the entire commission.
Cool. We'll err towards that. That makes sense.
Yeah, and that way you also have quorum. So if there is a technological failure or something like that, you don't lose quorum. You don't have to restart the meeting. You don't have to stop the meeting. Anything like that.
Right.
All right. Sean, do you have anything else?
I don't. Does everybody feel good about any other looming questions, concerns, thoughts regarding electronic policy while we have Larry on the line? Now would be a now or never kind of thing.
Not never. I still work at the city. They still pay me. So you can ask me questions literally anytime. You can email me. It's fine.
No, but I think we're good, Larry. Thank you so much for popping in and answering our questions.
No, thank you all. Thank you all for your service. Appreciate it. See you.
Have a good night. All right. So I move for us to vote on a adopting this policy?
I second it.
1 second.
All right. So I'm just going to go in order of my screen and asking for votes. And if I miss anybody, please let me know. Karen,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Essence,
Yes.
Babette,
Yes,
Elliot,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Valeria,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Okay. Sean, do you have anything else for public art before we move on to grants? Anything else on the policy? All right, Essence, take it away.
Alrighty then. So we are in the process of wrapping up the spring 2021 grant cycle. And we've gone back to the traditional applications that we offer as the BAC, so the operational grants that are available to arts organizations, and the project support that's for organizations or individual artists who are interested in putting on a project that's arts related. So we had 32 applicants total this round, and among them, we did have some new applicants, which we were happy to see. The panelists from BAC this round was Bryony, Elizabeth, Elliot, and I. And then members of the public who served, Rachel Kabukala and Sarah Martin, who are arts professionals and graduate students at IU. We all thoroughly read and scored each application, and we divided the work a little bit for the deliberation meeting that we had on May 22nd. So we had some first readers and second readers who were responsible for like introducing the application and giving some preliminary thoughts. And then after those two people gave those first thoughts, then everybody else was able to chime in and give feedback and other thoughts. And Sean took copious notes for us so that we could give feedback to our applicants, especially to those who we would like to see apply again in the future, strengthening applications, not just for BAC, but for other grant opportunities as well. And then we took a few more days to finalize our scores because that conversation that we had on the 22nd was so in depth. Sean then took the averages and provided us with 3 funding scenarios. We met again on May 31st. This is a big rundown of what the process was like, just so that you know. We met again on May 31st. And the panelists, we all voted. We were wanting to support as many organizations and projects as possible, and with as few caveats as well. And so without having to say, if you do this, then the next time we will be able to support you. Just without any caveats, any notes that we had, we wanted to support the organizations and the projects that had the most positive feedback, is what I'm trying to say. Sean will go into detail about the numbers and the recommendation that we have for you. But overall, what I would like to say about the application pool that we had, I'm excited to see that we have organizations who are taking creative risks. That's really exciting to me. And then even more than that, I'm excited about the individual artists who applied their interest in the applications and the grants, and their cool projects as well are a very promising trend for the emerging artist grants application that we are in the process of developing for the fall. Sean, I'll pass it to you.
Awesome. Essence, that was super thorough. Thank you. And very helpful, I think, for the whole commission to understand how we do the grants and the kind of amount of time. What Essence didn't mention is that meeting was 3.5 hours long of going in depth on each and every application.
On a Saturday.
On a
Don't
Saturday.
forget, it was on a sunny Saturday.
Yeah. So we do a really good thorough process. I will after we approve this funding scenario, I will start to send out letters and notifications, and we will start to work with both groups that did receive funding and groups that didn't for feedback and improvement on their application process. The reason why we time our grants this way is that the Zone Arts grants will be coming up in August, and that gives a chance for individuals who didn't receive funding to be able to apply for the BUEA. We've had a pretty good success rate with groups that have not applied to use the feedback and the notes from the grants committee to then apply for the BUEA and have some pretty good success with that. So overall, this is what we're looking at. We have, just to recap too, we have two categories: operational support and project support. The project grants are limited at a $2,000 income, and then operational support grants are maxed out based on the applicant itself. And that is essentially no more than 5% of their operational budget, or $5,000 max, because we don't have a ton of money. Essentially what we're making the recommendation, or grants committee is making the recommendation for, is to distribute roughly $41,000 to these organizations that was in your packet. This includes the 4th Street Arts Festival, BCT, as well as things like Lotus, Cardinal Stage Company, Writing for a Change Foundation of Bloomington, which is a newer applicant, has relocated into the downtown and has been around for a couple of years, but has not participated in our programs before. So we were excited about that. And a variety of different projects and programs. For example, just to highlight Krampus, this is Krampus's last year as Krampus as we know it. They're actually retiring the project. And so, in its last year, they wrote a really good kind of report and application. So what you're seeing too is that we were really thoughtful, and the grant committee was really thoughtful about a variety of different kinds of not only programs and projects, touching a variety of disciplines from music to performing arts, thinking about operational grants. Year-round services are really important. Artisan Alley supports a lot of artists in our community and are continuing to do so with their mural program. So they were kind of a highlight out of the operational program in terms of their application, as well as Midway, who's former Commissioner Rachel Glago is affiliated with that organization. So overall, we're pretty happy with the spread. Not everybody gets funding. Not everybody gets the full amount. We've always had tension with that as a commission. Sorry, was there a question I couldn't hear? Sorry, I couldn't see the screen. I'm sharing my screen. So we try to do a good job of adjusting the scores based off of what funding was available, which was about 40,000, which is what we normally have in this cycle. And like I said, in the spring or in the fall, we will also have not only the BUEA zone grants, but we will be having our fall cycle of $60,000 available that we'll need to distribute in the year 2020. So there's a greater chance of funding out there for other organizations and for continuation of various projects. So happy to answer any questions. I'm going to stop screening sharing if that's okay, so I can get back to kind of hosting the meeting and seeing everybody.
Babette, go ahead.
I was just saying, there are about 3 or 4 new names that I'm not familiar with there. Could you just give a sentence or two about them, Essence, or?
Yeah, I'm happy to. What name? Okay. Yeah.
Now, I don't have the list anymore.
Oh, here, I'll bring it up.
Yeah, the ones who are less familiar names.
Yeah. So, for example, some of the newer ones, 4th Street Arts Festival, even though it's been around 40 years.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah. But they've never applied to our grant program before. So this was they were a first applicant. We have That's Diamore, which is Leanne. It's a new festival type program that has the potential to become an annual festival at Switchyard during Valentine's Day. It's to celebrate songs of love. It's kind of an interesting program that we saw that was highlighting to happen in the month of February, which we hadn't seen before. With
Yeah,
the
but it was
tree,
with interesting. It was with really interesting instruments, like very. I don't remember what century instruments they were, but like 17th.
Well, and Valentine's Day, we don't have much going on, and that's great.
yeah, the other one that you might not be familiar with is With the Trees. It's a
Yeah.
publishing platform that's here. They do incredible work focusing on non-binary, non-gender-based individuals. Their program and portfolio work is really strong. I'm trying to think. Forgotten Clefs is, celebrating kind of early music. They're kind of a branch of the Bloomington Early Music Festival. And then out of the operational support grants, what we saw that was really nice that I want to be clear about is there's a tension in the community, and there's always been a tension around operational support grants because usually those organizations have the staff capacity to hire development directors. So there's a natural inequity that happens where emerging nonprofits never can get to the point of becoming a volunteer to like what would be considered a professional nonprofit organization. So what we're seeing actually is it naturally played itself out where we had previous grantees either not apply or apply in a different category, which is what is part of the framework. And so actually groups that applied in the operational support category last go around that didn't get it have now kind of received funding. So they improved their application. They did, they took feedback from our last round of applicants and were able to kind of, articulate their question or their answers better. And it kind of is an improvement of that cycle, because what we waived this year specifically is that if you received funding in 2019 for operational support, you could apply again. Initially, before COVID, this is really complicated and I apologize, but it's really important and really critical, I think, in the community, is that you had to sit out a cycle. That way we prevented this kind of natural ebb and flow so that organizations can kind of grow in strategy that way and grow professionally. We have not adopted a policy like that for project support. That is something we might want to consider. That is something we might want to think about in the future. Essence and I have already taken a couple notes too about our process in this go around and how we historically have done things for the grant committee and moving forward on improving our process. But that is one thing that was kind of, now not all the operational support folks are new. Cardinal Stage, Bloomington Creative Glass Center, received it in 2019. So that's a long-winded answer to your series of questions.
Yeah, no, I think the ones I was not familiar with, you covered. And it looks like a really nice, diverse, in terms of the different arts, and, it looks really good to me.
Nick?
Yeah, and this is just a curiosity, but like looking at it, it seems like the fund roughly splits 50-50. Like if I did the math right, it's like 20,000 in the project category and like 21 in the operational. I don't remember. Was that sort of a preset split, or is that just sort of naturally how it worked itself out as you reviewed?
Believe it or not, it naturally kind of worked itself out that way. We did roughly what we had to do because of the Recover Forward funds based off of City Council. The best way we could do this was either a pot of 60,000 or a pot of 41,000. And naturally, with the way the scores worked out, the fact that we went back to this kind of grant program and grant application to get the word out, all that kind of stuff, it didn't necessarily warrant that bigger pot yet. So in the fall, that will happen with our emerging and then also having another operational and project support. So it just kind of naturally worked itself out in that kind of funding scenario. It's because we do limit project support, frankly. And to be honest, operational budgets for our nonprofits, because of COVID, are a lot smaller this year. So that had to do with kind of fiscal projections, expenses, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. We don't want to punish organizations for downsizing, which saves some of their operation costs, but it does impact their overall. And that's just one mechanism that we might also want to consider as we look at other grants and how other granting organizations are thinking about the future of kind of philanthropy in this model, about how to be equitable. Because that's always been the most concern about the operational category, is this, how do nonprofits balance and equal out, and how do you not just kind of keep rewarding the ones that have the capacity to be rewarded?
Any questions regarding this document or the grants process? Essence, are we ready to vote on this?
Say yes. Is there anything else that we need to cover, Sean?
No, if there's no other questions, does somebody want to make a motion to approve the funding scenario?
Essence, go ahead.
I say, I make a motion to approve our panelist recommendation.
I second.
And I
All
call
right,
the roll, or you do that, Bryony?
whatever you prefer. This
Okay.
is your baby.
All right. Bryony,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Babette,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Elliot,
Yes, absolutely.
and me. I say yes.
Fantastic. All right, do we have anything else to cover in terms of grants?
Not at this point. I will email the grants committee with an update on what we're planning on meeting about next week.
Sounds good. Moving on to the strategic plan implementation. Does anybody have anything to offer at this meeting? Any updates? All right, I see no updates. That's okay. We'll resume it by the next meeting. Sean, you have staff report.
Yeah, so Waldron, we're moving forward on that. I will keep you all definitely posted on Waldron updates. So the last meeting was after the announcement, correct, Bryony?
Yes, it was right after the announcement, I believe, and the rally. But yes, no, it was right before the rally and before the
It was right
announcement was the day
before, about a minute before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was the Wednesday. The announcement was the day after. So we need an
Yeah.
update on the announcement, on
Yeah.
the rally, on everything.
But that's why I thought, okay, that's why I put it in there. I was just double checking. Space Cadet today. Obviously the Waldron, what has happened is we have taken basically verbatim the advice from the task force, which is to extend the agreement of the facility for 5 years, to seek an RFI for proposals to, or third-party management to run the Waldron itself, or have the city run it, to look into the capital investments and improvements that need to be made to get the building up to code. Mainly those things are HVAC concerns. Is half of the 500,000 is tied up with HVAC. The other stuff is like window restoration, some exterior issues with the tuck pointing. So we at the city are currently investigating that, and the likelihood of using American Rescue Plan Act funds to support that initiative. So that's in the short term. The mayor also committed to opening the building by January 3rd. That week that we had our meeting, I was on the phone constantly with a variety of different organizations to kind of figure out what the runway was. There's a couple different moving parts on why we wanted to get ahead of the announcement, i.e. mainly Broadway announcing that September they're going to be full capacity in New York, and what that meant for our organizations, which is on a different timeline. And essentially all the arts groups we're not planning on being back in stage indoors until the new year anyhow. This is because of permitting and also actors equity stuff. acquiring contracts for various rights. Those things take time, and nobody has really done that this year, because each 30 days it seems like new kind of mandates happen or restrictions are lifted. So it's been kind of complicated for the performing arts. I think, Nick, you mentioned at the last meeting that, September, you were thinking that the music, and it's still this way, that the music industry's, the floodgates are open, right? So we wanted to get kind of ahead of that and reassure the community and also the performing arts groups about that. So that's kind of where we are. We are working on the RFI, and we are working and investigating all the capital improvements that need to be done that was listed in the task force. We took to heart, obviously the Arts Forward Bloomington letter, and we are looking into a variety of requests made from that, but also the mayor really wanted to reassure the Buskirk Chumley, which is another building that we own, but is managed by the BCTM management, that they are part of the framework of the community. They are turning 100 next year for their centennial. And there's obviously some capital stuff with the marquee that needs to happen. And then eventually the last kind of commitment that was loosely made is looking at an expanded grant program, which will probably impact the BAC at some level, either being reviewers or guiding what that could be. That would likely be ARPA funds. I don't know what the commitment of those funds are. I don't know the number, is what I'm saying. We're kind of in the process of looking into that. But the mayor was concerned about only focusing on the Waldron and the BCT. So ensuring that we are cultivating other nonprofits, cultivating other arts and cultural groups to kind of grow and evolve in our community. So making sure that there's additional support out there for groups to either utilize or grow into things like the Waldron and then the BCT, which used to be a program that the BCT, I think, is going to eventually restart under Jonah's direction. So that's kind of a long-winded, thorough explanation of the press conference and where we are with the Waldron. Any questions, thoughts, concerns from the community, from the commission?
Okay, can you talk about the also kind of promise to look into a new venue?
Yes, good point. Totally missed that. The other thing that the mayor is really invested in, and as this is partially part of his campaign promises in a lot of ways, is to think about think about the future of Bloomington and think about our assets and our investments in the community. He also took to heart the recommendation to look at a new purpose-built facility. I think this is something that the commission could really be a strong advocate and voice just to entertain and pursue the visioning of what that could look like. We know that the devil's in the details, frankly, like where's money going to come from? Where's it going to be? But I think what's concerning to members of the community like Maya Michelson, who was in my position when she handed the building over to the Ivy Tech Waldron, or the Ivy Tech Community College, is that we've made do with the Waldron. And yes, it's a great asset, but it's got some issues, right? It's a 100-year-old building. It was not designed to be an art center. It was a city hall. So really asking the tough questions of what a new purpose-built facility could look like, and helping the community along in that process. I think most people focus on the hospital site and the convention center because those are in the mix and those are most of mine, but they're also 10 years out possibly. But I would just say that the expanding of the Buskirk Chumley Theater is not out of question. I think there's concern about it not being in the downtown, this performing arts center, right? Like if we were going to build it at the old hospital site, that it would no longer be a part of downtown. But the Buskirk Chumley is there and it has the ability to expand, right? If we really kind of double down our investments and think about a variety of approaches. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and I think the mayor would kind of stand behind the art commission to really, what I noticed in the conversations is that people, for the short term, the Waldron is the solution. Absolutely, we need it. It's infrastructure, it's not going anywhere. But in the long term, is it possible that we could do better? And I think people are kind of attached to the nostalgia of the Waldron rather than thinking about a new facility, frankly.
So Sean, what do we need to do as the Arts Commission to let the mayor know that we would want to be involved in that process and assist in that process?
Good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I will try to keep you all informed as we move forward, right? I think
But
we're trying.
should we provide like a letter kind of making it a point of saying we want to be involved, we're here for you kind of thing? Or is it not necessary to have kind of a paper trail communication
I don't think it.
interest?
I don't think at this moment there needs to be a letter or anything. I think what we need to figure out is what the capital improvement timeline is and this RFI, which would probably naturally have one of you all as a reviewing member to look over the third party management of the Waldron. So we could talk about who's involved in that or if there's multiple commissioners involved in the review process. So right now, I don't have a whole lot. We have a big meeting next week, which will help determine, because like I said, the ARPA stuff is kind of floating around, plus, what we need to do in the short term, where the pots of money are coming from. And then, are we using ARPA for the feasibility study for the new venue, right? Like, I just don't know what the timeline is, but hopefully next week I will know. So by our July meeting, I'll be able to kind of update you all on what the kind of commitment would be and involvement for the commission. But honestly, what I definitely need from you all is to help spread the information out. I think what I learned in the process about the task force is that the city did not do a great job of communicating what that process was, what it looked like, what the exact timeline was. And so for us for you all to further the communications about they're making progress, this is what we've committed to, keeping people informed, I think will go a long way in the community, frankly.
May I ask, Sean, if there's an article or a press release that you would recommend I use as a resource?
Yeah, what I can do, I saved the HT article and I can upload it into our folder. How about that?
Yes, thank you.
I just dropped the city's press release in the chat because I just happened to already be looking at it, but I don't know, maybe I missed it, but like with the potential of like a new facility, there is a commitment to like a third party like feasibility study,
Mm-hmm.
So when that study happens, I think is what you're getting at, Bryony, but I think the expectation is that, just like has happened with the hospital site and, the convention center, things like that, I imagine that will include like multiple stakeholder meetings that will not just potentially involve the Arts Commission, but also I would hope that we would be able to get in the mix early on to also propose the other key stakeholders that should participate.
Yeah, overall, I think we need to be a little bit more involved than, be part of two focus groups kind of thing.
I agree. Yeah, that would be also too. I think it's important. I just want to be clear too that the feasibility study could come back and say, no, it's the Waldron, right? Like that's another thing too that could happen, right? I just don't want, like, I think what I've noticed is that people have been like, why would you build something new when we have the Waldron? And it's like, well, there's a fire exit that goes through one of the stages and you have to design a stage around a fire bay, right? Like that's not great for the arts, right? Two of the galleries are essentially hallways, right? For the visual artists, that's not great, right? Like we should really think about like what our commitment to the arts is and what is the best infrastructure we can provide them for them to thrive, essentially.
Sean, who's chairing this?
There's not really a single chair. I would say that the mayor is very heavily involved and the deputy mayor, and then our department with a variety of different departments. So I would say that our department is probably the point person for the moment, for the time being, until we can think about, till a third party management group comes in to run the space. We have to go to bid for that. So that process we're hoping to get in line by July.
Okay. Sean, feel free to offer my name for anything that comes up. and then we can work from there backwards if anybody else wants to step up or anything. But in order to get, like, I provide myself as the liaison for the Bloomington Arts Commission ahead of time. Feel free to commit me to whatever comes our way that needs to be committed to as you go through all of these meetings. And then one last question about the Waldron is, did you get the second Arts Forward Bloomington letter that went to the mayor?
Yeah, I believe so. I haven't had a chance to read it, but
That's okay. I want to know that it made it to the end because I'm here in Michigan and
yeah,
I know it was sent, but it was getting a little stuck there.
Yeah, no, I believe so. I believe it came in, which is great. And we're happy. I'm glad that the rally was celebratory. It's going to be complicated, just so you all know. I mean, we own the BCT as well. The buildings are roughly 500 feet apart. It's challenging, right? So we're going to try to do our best to work through, you know, what the future of both of those spaces look like and how they can be cultural assets moving forward. And we're super happy with Jonah Crismore. I know I've mentioned his name a few times. If you haven't had a chance to meet Jonah, the director of the BCT, he started March 15th, 2020. He's done a great job and we're really excited to see what he kind of brings to the table for the Buzzkirk Chumley. And we'll see what kind of comes in with the Waldron. You know, we already have one proposal on the table. It could be that group, the Cardinal BPP BAFT merger. It could be something else, right? We'll see what's kind of out there, but it will remain in the short term a cultural center. So just want to reassure everybody on that.
What was the perception of the rally at City Hall?
That is a good question. I think overall positive. I mean, I think the commission knows this. The mayor is very arts supportive, has been since day one, really. Yeah, I think fairly positive. I know that Councilperson Sandberg was there, so that's always a good thing. Or sent comments in lieu of. So I think everybody was fairly happy about it, and I'm sure they were happy to see the letter and the. So we'll see how that goes. So yeah, I think it was good, and I think last week, Bryony, you absolutely hit it out of the park on the council meeting. I was just so blown away, and you literally left council speechless. So it's always helpful to do that. Going from 0 questions to 1 is like a really good thing. So thank you.
It was 1.5 because someone wasn't able to ask their question too.
Oh yes, President Volin, that's right. Or no, it's Sims as president, but Steve Volin, yes. So.
All right. What other staff updates do you have?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, so the other news is a little bit bittersweet. You saw in my email that I will be officially resigning after our next meeting next month. So I just kind of wanted to touch base with you all about what that looks like. And that it is like never a good time to leave a job this awesome. But my partner and I and Fanny are all moving to Philadelphia next month. I'm going to go back to graduate school to focus on my own practice a little bit. So yeah, it's a bit of an awkward thing because I've been here for 5 years and been a part of so many art commission meetings, and a lot of the work that I do is directly reflected by you all. And so it's been a tremendous honor and privilege to work with you all over these years, and to understand the work that we do is very much needed right now and will continue to be needed. And I think we're all doing the right stuff, right? We're pursuing these things. We're getting grant funding out there. We're commissioning and hiring artists constantly. And we can always strive to be better. And yeah, so because the reason why there's kind of a little bit of a long time frame for this is because I had to submit my resignation so that we could get a job posting up. So if you know of anybody directly that would be a great fit, please be sure to send that to them when that goes live. It's supposed to go live any day now. I'm trying to actively recruit folks for this position. So if you know of anybody, that would be great. It will likely change a little bit just because of the Waldron, right? That is going to be all eyes on the Waldron for the next 12 to 18 months, frankly. I think as we think about the recovery of the arts and culture sector here. I will say this, I am working with Alex and ESD to potentially remain on contract to finish out at least most of the 1% projects. So helping you all kind of, just because the intimacy of the timing, and it just would be too much for somebody to deal with $500,000 worth of capital improvements on a building, as well as $600,000 worth of public art commissions. So I'm kind of working out, and we'll be working out what that looks like at a capacity level. So you still might see me, and I still will hopefully be involved with the city. I'm committed to that and committed to seeing these projects through. And I'm talking way too much because I'm so nervous. So I'm just filling space and happy to answer any questions or concerns or thoughts. So.
Anyone?
Gonna miss you, Sean.
So first, I would like to say congratulations again. I think that that's great that you're taking time to focus on your own work again, because I know that this job is a lot of work. I only see a slice of it, but I'm sure it's a ton. I'm curious about what what kind of requirements it is, or prerequisites that the job requires. Is it more so like government experience, or is it arts experience? Is it both? Philanthropy? What is it? The key words that'll make an ideal candidate, do you think?
Essence, that's a great question, and thank you for your support. It means a lot, because I've enjoyed working with you, especially on the grants this year. It's the prerequisites are pretty open. I think that's what's awesome about the city of Bloomington. We don't necessarily have like a master's requirement, right? A lot of these public art and arts and cultural jobs tend to have that. That is not a requirement of this job, which I think is really, and I've vouched for that again. So I will say this, I think because of the nuance of where we are in the community, I think somebody that has performing arts or has an ability around facilities and cultural facilities, not necessarily the bare bones management, but could be the bare bones management. I don't want them to necessarily be limited by that, or like only focused on just keeping spaces alive, but that's a lot of work. And one of the things that has shifted over the last 2 years is that our department has taken over the oversight management of the Buskirk Chumley Theater with the BCT, and now we will be doing the Waldron as well. So because of those two facilities being so tightly together, I think that kind of changes it. It's not that the public art stuff is going to stop, but we still don't really know, and you all saw this last week at the council meeting with Jeff's presentation. We're still not 100% on where kind of capital projects will land in the next couple of years, and whether we're going to hold back on those to the mayor's term of being counter-cyclical. We will always budget for public art projects, murals, neighborhood grants, but 1% projects might slow down, right? We went from 0 to 90 really fast by doing 4 in 1 year, in a couple of years. So that priority is probably going to not necessarily take a back seat, but kind of maybe go a little quiet for a bit. I would say that you don't necessarily need government experience. You can learn this on the job. It's fairly simple. I would say that over the 5 years that I've been here, I've learned a lot about patience and diplomacy. And that's very important. And I think an aspect, it's fast paced. My crew that I work with, the ESD team, is amazing. Having a sense of humor is really helpful. You have to have a thick skin. Everybody has an opinion about how you should do your job, and everybody will tell you how to do your job. So that's a tough aspect of the job for some people that I've worked with over the years working here. But the positive of it is that this type of work and this type of public service is for the good, right? It's for the greater good. It's for the next generations of Bloomington. It's for people that come here and that want to find themselves in part of a place. And that's directly the work that we do. We directly invest in the quality of life. So being invested in that conversation and being willing to look into that, I think anybody will fly high at this job. It's really not that hard.
I have a question, or Babette, you can go first. Sorry.
Well, I just I wanted to say I wish you the very best of luck, and I'm sure you don't remember meeting me when about the first week that you were here, when you made a presentation to SCORE, and so I've kind of seen all the whole transition, and I think that you've brought an enormous amount of change, which I both personal and then to the job, and I wouldn't underestimate that by saying anybody could do it without much background, because I think at this point you'll be an act to follow, a tough act to follow. So that being said, quite selfishly, I wanted to ask you, I've been talking to Sam and Nick, trying to get this mapping and done of public art here in the town. And I've located some very strange things that I've been surprised that existed. So it seems like the last hole is that, believe it or not, on Wikipedia, of all things, there's a terrific outline. There's a whole bunch of public art, very specific, that was actually posted on there, and they are using the OpenStreetMap. So I don't know what you referenced, that you've mentioned several times about there being other records and other places things are available. So what I wondered if we could set up some kind of a time that anybody who's interested in this project could meet with you, put together whatever it is that we have that exists, and then figure out how we're going to go. Because the one thing that I found is actually terrific. It ties in with a map, etc. And if it could just be expanded on, I have a couple of ideas of getting public participation in this that I think could be a lot of fun. And we just need the mechanics and to know where we can start off.
Yeah, Baba, that's a great question. I'm sorry that I've left you hanging on emails. So this is something that I've been slowly updating, which is a pretty intense master document of outdoor installations, what's in City Hall. Hopefully this is loading. It's being a little slow. So I'll be able to, and we actually have this coordinated with a Google Map document that I'll be able to share with you all. So we can carve out a meeting time. I'm happy to do that out the meeting. I haven't totally forgotten about you. So I apologize for leaving you hanging on via emails. But
I'm
Nick
sure
and I
you've got a ton of stuff to do it, but I think this is just such a worthwhile thing.
Absolutely.
And if you looked at that's great. Okay. So, and maybe there's, I don't know if in our budget that we could get someone who could, we could all work together in getting photographs or pictures or whatever, and getting someone to do the entry so we could actually have a map or not. I mean, I think it's from the stuff that I found, they're all done in different ways, but they're all pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
maybe we can.
And we'll want to be celebrating, like I said, with all the 1% projects, that could be a maybe by Stefan's, which would be the last 1%, maybe that's a good timeline for us to look at for having a completed map, right? Because then we'll be able to have all the installation shots and updated like 1% with some of the other projects. And I think that would give time for Visit Bloomington to kind of recover some funds. And then we could maybe partner with them on the map itself, like the printed map.
Mhm.
So I can,
Well, I think if we get this and we can get this, and I say you have some coordinates and other stuff, and decide. I mean, I'm not familiar technically with OpenStreetMaps or anything, but I think it's not that difficult in all probability. Probably Nick and Sam can speak a lot more to that. So maybe, I don't know if you guys would be available, anybody else, to work on this. And if you could just set up a time for it. And then whatever, if we need photographs or something, we can divvy stuff up. And I think Connie would do some kind of, something in the Herald Times to ask people to participate and send in their best photograph of public art or whatever. And it would which would be another way of getting everybody involved in it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I think we should all go on a treasure hunt and just go
Yeah.
taking
Go ahead,
one day.
This is like one of the ideas that Valeria and I were developing for social media. So I definitely want to be part of that meeting and that team that's doing this. So add me to the list, please.
Okay, so that's actually good to know. Because just to clarify, when we sort of started at the top of the year talking about our year-long calendar and priorities, obviously things like the public art master plan is stretched longer than intended. But knowing that master plan was going to be the public art committee's focus for the first half of the year, this public art inventory and associated map and things like that was intended to be the focus for the second half of the year. Now, it doesn't mean we can't parallel process, doesn't mean we can't be working on it now, but I think that a natural framework, it doesn't have to be exclusionary in any way, but the natural framework, I think, was to work with it within the public art committee. We could, have a separate set of ad hoc meetings to sort of build on that. But I think that just from like an organizational standpoint, knowing that some work might happen in different meetings, we're not always going to have everyone in the same place. We've had a bit of conversation in those committee meetings. We've had a bit of conversation in like straight emails. I think what we need to do is just very simply, I think, starting in like a Google Doc, collect the links of resources that we're talking about, about the Wikipedia page that you're talking about. I think we've looked at, certain links on the Visit Bloomington page. There's a Limestone Post article with like a mural tour that we've referenced before. Mm-hmm. And then there's that, big Excel sheet or Google sheet rather, and like associated Google map that Sean's talking about. So I think that with Sean doing this sort of, retrospective review and sort of preparing to exit, I think if we can get like a clear view on the assets, and resources that the city has, that staff has, and sort of marry that with some of that other stuff, put it all in one place so that anyone who's interested can reference it in that document. And I think we start with just what do we have now, and as a group identify what our gaps are and sort of who wants to be involved in filling that in, and what role community plays in that, what role other organizations might play in that. And then, whether in the public art meeting, or if there's interest from folks, it sounds like there is, outside of just that committee, we could either invite people to join that regular committee for a couple specific meetings to focus on this, or we could find like a separate ad hoc time to talk about it. But I feel like we will get the traction sort of once we can like put all those pieces together. And and it sounds like, like just getting those existing resources from Sean is sort of the key to knowing what we have.
Yeah, I would say that, I already set up a folder. There just isn't that much, but these, at least I haven't been able to, and I've really looked, I've been able to find relatively little. So I think that there's so much that we have to do in these meetings, and a lot of it is just reporting on things that have happened. So, and I guess I'm concerned about Sean's leaving and trying to get everything that he knows where it is, where those bodies are buried, so to speak. And if maybe we could just, spend, anyone is there, just spend an hour just on this so we can get it really moving, as opposed to, well, we'll discuss it at this meeting and then we'll discuss it at the next and go, which is kind of our MO sometimes. And we get a lot of stuff done, but it does go on. And
Yeah,
I don't want
I
them to
think-
go
I
on
think that's-
without doing it.
But that, I think where we're getting tripped up is that there's a lot of this needs to be happening outside of the meetings. And these
Exactly.
meetings are more about reporting and updating. So I'll work
Mhm.
with you outside of the meetings to figure out a strategy of how to get it done. Okay? And once we figure out those steps, we will let others know what the steps are, what the schedule is, and where we need them. Sounds good? All right.
Perfect.
So
Any,
sorry, I do have one question on the topic that we were originally on with Sean's departure, and that is with this hire, does the BAC play any role in that? Is there any like sort of visibility as far as the applicant pool, transparency of process throughout? I have no expectations. I'm just curious.
That's a great question. I believe Bryony's going to be involved. I'm not sure about what that looks like. Like I said, we've been waiting for HR to post the position, which triggers a lot of that, right? Like timing and interviews and how long the job posting will be up. So I will definitely be in. Yeah, like Sally Gaskill interviewed me. She was part of my, who was our former chair. So the BAC will be involved. I just don't know what that looks like. And it could be others. If you want to raise your hand, Nick, it seems like you're pretty interested right now and pretty vested in that. So we can, doesn't mean anybody else can't, right? We can work that out. I will say this, the job interview is a Olympic feat. It is it's like a half day job interview. It's pretty intense. I will say that much. So, yeah, y'all will be involved.
Sean, I need to interrupt you. It is 6:30 and I want to have public comment. If we want to run over, that's fine, but public comment needs to be happening during the hour. So we have 2 members of our public. Kira, you've got your raised hand. Do you want to speak?
Hi everybody. Congratulations to everyone who won on the grant, and I'm really looking forward to feedback because I need it. But I just wanted to, let me unraise my hand if I can. I don't know if I do that. Hold on. Let me see, lower hand. Okay. At any rate, I was listening to you guys talk about the treasure hunt, and I'll just be really quick. My foundation, which specializes in mental wellness with the arts and nature, we do have a treasure hike hunt, but it's for nature. I like how you guys are thinking of doing the treasure hike to incorporate like tours around the city to show like art and art galleries and stuff like that. And I just wanted to know how I can incorporate that into what I'm already doing and help out. And if the city would even be interested in helping kind of bring the aspect or the need for mental wellness, especially in minority communities, like what I'm doing with my organization, along with, the need to get out and get about, get out and see these places, see nature, but also see art and things like that, because that's a huge part of our alternative mental wellness is art therapy. And so we do already have maps, treasure hunts. Bryony, I think, and Essence, you guys might be on our mailing list and may have gotten that newsletter that shows our treasure hike hunts. As of right now, we're just doing it to fundraise. So that's like $5, $3 to fundraise. But I don't know if my organization has a place in that with the city to help out or join. So I don't know. Yeah, that was just my comment, because we were talking about treasure hunts and we have that going on.
Thank you, Kira. Thank you for sharing. I don't have a direct answer for you right now. I think the first time we mentioned the treasure hunt idea was today. So we will need to go back to the table as the Public Art Committee and talk about it. But I will reach out back to you and let you know what the outcome is. But it might take a couple months. All right. Chaz, do you have anything to say today?
what is Kira's web address for her organization?
Kira, do you want to add it to the chat or should I?
Is that it?
I just put it up there right now. Sorry, I was on mute and typing at the same time. So I just put
No
it up
worries.
there. It's bit.ly/set-posse, and it has all of our info there.
Thank you so much for sharing. Chaz, you gonna say hello today?
Hi, everyone. Congrats, Sean. I have nothing really to add except for we're going to have some kids workshops this summer. If you know any kids, it's ours. So we're kind of getting back into our programming, and we had a really great opening on Friday. And so that was really exciting. So that's it from me. Good work, everyone. Sean, you'll be missed. So sad, but exciting times.
Thank you, Chaz. All right, commissioner announcements. Anything that anybody else wants to add? All right, nothing to add. Sean, when that job posting goes live, please make sure that you email us all with the information so that we can start to distribute it. And anything else that you want us to communicate to the masses, let us know.
Yeah.
Additionally, as you try to wrap things up, if there's any way we can assist you, just let us know, give us an update, reach out, and so that your exit is as easy and smooth as possible, even though you're still going to be involved, from far away. I'd rather you be able to be as minimally involved as possible and just on the big things that are hard to pass on to a new person, and stop micromanaging the little things. You should leave that to other
Definitely.
people.
Yeah, no,
So-
we're Alex is very sensitive to this too, and that's why we wanted to kind of get it out so that nothing would slip through the cracks. Kira, I sent you know, just I will try to connect you with folks at the Community Family Resources Department. They do some outreach in that kind of mental health kind of capacity. So I'll just try to make sure you know the right folks over in that department that can help you more in the short term versus our arduous long-term process. So
Thank you. Thank you. Because we are trying to make this like a monthly thing, especially in the summer, and something that can add value to the city, like some type of events, or maybe even join an organization, how you guys had talked about earlier, like getting other smaller baby organizations to help out and volunteer and provide events, or, little fun art stations and stuff like that. So yeah, and I'm willing to get together with anyone and partner and help out. So
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. And thank you, Chaz, too. But yeah.
Babette?
We'll make sure that
Yeah.
the bodies are not buried too deep in the ground, Babette. So
One last question. I kind of put the whole thing with the community hour on the side, thinking that it would start in the fall. But my big question is, in lieu of what you were talking about, I'm assuming that it has to be thought of now as an in-person as opposed to Zoom. And
Not necessarily,
therefore,
because it's not a public meeting. It's outside. It does not fall under the policy. It's a public event. So it doesn't have to be
Okay.
in person.
do you think people are going to be sick and tired of doing anything by Zoom, or it would be a relief come September, October?
I think we could run a quick poll and get an idea from people themselves instead of assuming.
I think basically from and I'll double check with Larry on this for you all. I think what it means is if there are more than 2 commissioners at a particular event, so let's say 3 of you all want to host a community meeting, we have to publicly notify the public of that, which is really silly, which would mean literally printing a piece of paper and putting it up in City Hall. That's like open door policy 101, which is just kind of crazy. That's
what
all
if 2 are hosting and 2 are attending?
I'm not sure. Like I said, I'll have to talk to Larry about what this triggers, but I think it would, when it's been more program based. We just have to publicly put it out there, which Facebook would be that, right? So we might be fine. It's just a matter of 48 hours before the meeting, right? Let's say you're doing the community hour, it has to go live on Facebook, right? That's all it is. So I will double check with Larry on that, because I think it's only going to be 2 commissioners at a time. So.
Okay. But I mean, that's something we would want to do regardless. We want to publicize it. But is it better to start out with the first one as an in-person thing, or is it better to start out with it in Zoom? And if it's in person, then it has to be City Hall or the library, I'm assuming.
No, I could be anywhere. You could do it at Cardinal or what, you could show off an organization. Art Alliance is opening a new facility on the west side in the mall. That might be a good one to partner. That might be a great partnership for that. So it doesn't have to be, it just has to be publicly put out there, right? So I can, and I have a feeling I know what Chaz is raising her hand.
I was going to say, Chaz?
Bar would definitely be interested if you needed a place. So you can talk to me about it if you, doesn't have to be every month, but if you wanted to like go around to different arts organizations, we have great spaces for meetings and community hours. So yeah.
Babette, I think people are excited to be in person. I would plan on the fall being in person.
Yeah, that appeals to me personally, but okay. Chaz, can you just put your email address in the chat for me, please?
All right. Anything else? Because we are officially 9 minutes over, people. I want to be aware of everybody's time. I don't like to be late. Essence, are you trying to say something? Okay. Well, with that, we adjourn this meeting. Is there anything else in the agenda? I don't believe so. Nope. All right, let's adjourn this meeting at 6:39. Sam, do you have any questions in regards to the minutes? You got it all covered.
They're beautiful.
Fantastic.
They only spaced out like every now and then.
All right, sounds good. Well, everybody have a great end to your week, and we'll be in touch for committee meetings.
I'll like clean them up, and then when are they like due, or does it? Who do I send them to?
Just send them to me. I'll look them over.
Okay.
Sounds good. All right. Have a good evening.